Paint Your Man. This is Learn to Build. Come follow us along. Today we're learning about excavating for foundations. We're at the Buckingham Keep project. Let's get after it. All right, so we're over here, the Buckingham Keep project. We've been waiting to start this for, the better part of a year with different obstacles like the township, setbacks with Corona and things like that. We really had to just keep pushing on this one to make sure it got done and even got started. There was a couple spots where I guess we could have just given up at, but luckily, we fought through it. We have a great customer here. We're eager to get their home started, and we think this is going to be an amazing home. So we're also really excited to build this home just because of the cool things that are going into it. This house is roughly 8,000 square feet, 2-story, has a modern farmhouse style with a little bit of rustic aesthetic on the inside when we're finished. We have an intense amount of topsoil and rock still strewn about. The biggest obstacle we've come up against so far in digging the foundation was just like the sheer amount of rock that we have in the soil here. We have a couple really big ones laying about here. The soil isn't exactly clean. A lot of jackhammering, a lot of work for the machinery, but we're gonna walk down into the hole right now. The forms for the footings or the footers are going in on Monday. So we're gonna go, walk around the hole and just check out some stuff and point a couple things out to you that we look for prior to getting a foundation formed in, what we do to get the hole ready, basically. Let's do it. So this we're standing on right here is a dig stake. They have different colors on them to indicate kind of like what they reference on the site plan. Your surveyor, your survey contractor will come out prior to the excavation company or your foundation company coming to dig the hole. Basically, these stakes all have reference numbers and elevation numbers written on them, and then they're marked out for different points of reference for the edge of the home, as well as how far in from these stakes we're supposed to dig at. The outside edge of the home, I believe the garage, the driveway will come around this way, and then you'll come in the garage over here. So we have a dig stake for over here, indicating the outside of our dig area. And then we have these orange stakes on the inside here that indicate like the actual edge of the foundation. So some of the dig stakes obviously got cut up in the excavation progress, but if you look around the site, there are still stakes intact, like, hey, this is the point of the foundation. Hey, this is the corner of the foundation over here. So it's really important to get that put in first before you start digging, because really there's no way to know where you're digging until those stakes go into the ground. So back to what I was saying, these stakes all have information on here, the elevation height, and where you are in degrees from your point of reference on the drawing. So your survey company will come out, they'll put a point of reference into the ground, and then they'll take all of their measurements the entire time the project's going on from that point of reference, and they will continuously evaluate throughout the project different soil heights, where soil needs to go. And then ultimately, during certain as-built studies where the surveyor comes out and actually takes like a good survey of the site, the as-built study will then say, hey, like soil over here needs to be graded a little bit more steeply, or maybe put out a little bit more of a less of a grade. So all that information is coming into you real time as you're building the home at various points. So you do a little bit of work, then you get an engineer to give you more information, and then you do a little bit more work, and then the engineer has to come back out and give you your final little bit of information towards the end of the project to say, hey, your site is good to go, all the dirt is where it's supposed to be, your home was built where it was supposed to be built, and everything's copacetic, and the township will ultimately give you your occupancy permit. A little bit rundown into the future for you there, but it all starts pretty much with these stakes getting marked out into the ground. The survey comes out, says this is where the home's going, and then the excavator and everybody else from then on knows what they're doing from these little pieces of wood right here. A little bit more of an examination. We have a cross right here indicating that this is like a corner point followed by 10 apostrophe. So that's 10 feet. And then this right here says BLD box. And what that means is build box. Not quite your envelope, which is like a little bit larger than your box. Your building envelope would be a little bit further over that way, and your building envelope is, you know, basically the area you're allowed to disturb, or area of disturbance. And then this right here indicates like, hey, there should absolutely be no digging or anything going on outside of this blue flag perimeter. So everything happening from here on is 10 feet into that way typically. So there's a couple areas that indicate differently, but basically your blue flags are the exterior area, and then your spray painted markers right here are your actual dig locations. This kind of gives you a level of redundancy and will help you maintain accuracy throughout your dig, because a lot of times those stakes closer to the home will get damaged or disrupted throughout the digging process. These blue stakes that remain undisturbed, you can kind of go, okay, we're good over at this point. The blue stakes over here, you can take your measurement from here, reference it to the drawings, and you can kind of like, you know, maintain accuracy that way. Yeah, look at all these rocks, Gilmar. Like, they were just chipping away at all this stuff. Not fun digging. A couple real big ones in here. Like, look at this guy. We're standing over here on the north side of the house. This is the back of the home. Over in front of me right here, this will ultimately be the garage. The hole behind me is significantly more deep than the hole in front of me. And this is mainly because there's no basement going underneath the garage, right? So the footers will go in, and we don't need to dig as deep because we're not excavating for a full foundation. So the footers and the wall on the garage side, as well as the back porch or front porch, you don't need to dig out a hole that you just don't need to dig out for no reason. So we leave these holes a little bit more shallow, still below the frost line, and then we will backfill into this area, and then the slab for the garage will be poured in on top of that. Whereas behind me, that hole in some areas, it's probably like 10 or 12 feet deep right now. So that is all excavated so that the depth of the basement, it's actually excavated deeper than what your basement ultimately will be, because you have to put the footings in, then you put your stone and your drains in for underground plumbing, and then your subfloor or slab, concrete slab, is poured in after that. So this basement, I believe, has 10-foot ceilings. I could be wrong. You need to dig out an excess of what you actually need to dig out in order to get your concrete forms in, and all of the concrete poured and all of that action in terms of getting drains and everything perforated through the forms, and then the concrete poured on top of that. So what you actually see here isn't the actual size of the foundation. It's, you know, a couple feet wider in all regards, and once the forms go in and the concrete hardens and the waterproofing goes in, then we'll come in and backfill, and this hole, in terms of ground area, will shrink in probably about 4 to 6 feet all the way around. So your form for the garage, the footing will probably be somewhere in the center of this hole. The wall will come up, and then you'll have this huge void in between the formed wall and what undisturbed soil we have. That, and all that soil that you see around here will then get backfilled. So we'll probably lose about a third of what we have strewn across the site right now. We're probably still gonna have to find a place for all of this soil off-site. We do have a pretty significant size project here, but we still don't have enough area to get rid of all of this soil. So we'll have to find creative ways of getting rid of it. Farmers, other construction sites, people that need topsoil. Sometimes quarries will take it after they're done, you know, digging out all their millable product. They'll backfill the quarry with aggregate that's just left over from stuff like this. All right, so we were talking about having a jackhammer and all the stone and everything that we ran into over here, and this is kind of what we're talking about. As you can see, I'm just kind of peeling this stuff up here. It's a shale like stone, but right here, we're standing on solid rock right here, and this is that's my hand, like, look, I'm indicating this is solid rock. Okay, but basically you can see how they had to kind of chisel and chip away the actual rock that we're standing on. Sometimes it's easy digging. Sometimes you really gotta like chip away. But what's good about this is you're building your house on top of rock,
right? If you build your house on top of sand, when the water comes by, your sand's looser, you know, it could affect your foundation over time. But if you build your foundation on top of rock, and there's nowhere, like we literally had to like jackhammer the rock out of the ground, like your house, you're building your house on a very, very strong surface. So although it's a little bit more work to excavate on top of rock, or when you do run into rock, ultimately you could make the argument that it builds a better foundation. I'm sure our excavator doesn't feel that way today for all the extra work he did, but it's not necessarily a bad thing, it just means a little bit more work in the excavation process. This is the foundation at Buckingham Keep. We're excited to get going, and hopefully you learned something from this video. I'm Andrew Mann. This is the Learn to Build series. Hit the subscribe button, give this video a like if you learned something, follow us on Instagram, and stay tuned for more.